Hello again, arts fundraisers, and welcome back to Creative Capital. In this fifth installment, we're going to discuss what it takes to be prepared for the fundraising ask. Fundraising is simple, but you need to be equipped with the right information before you set out to make a gift request. To be successful in fundraising, you need more than just a good plan. You need the right system, the right mindset, and the right resources. This session provides an overview of RSC's approach to all of those things. The key points that we'll cover: first, put the ask into perspective. Asking takes up the least amount of time in relationship development, but it carries the most important impact to your organization. Therefore, you have to get it right or all the other steps won't matter. Number two, have the right fundraising mindset. It's important to focus on value and not need. Instead of emphasizing how much money your organization needs, you'll talk about the difference your work makes. Also, embrace a mindset of participation, not prevention. Don't wait for people to come to you. You should actively engage them in the act of giving. Encourage them to participate and let them be a part of your arts organization's story. Number three, creating a culture of philanthropy. Fundraising should be seen as part of everyone's job, not just the development staff. This doesn't mean everyone should be asking for money. Rather, it means that your board, your leadership, artists, and staff should all be ambassadors for your mission. A culture of philanthropy creates an environment where giving is valued and encouraged and not seen merely as some necessary evil. Next, the right resources. You need to acquire the right resources, which includes a strong team, good tools, and excellent fundamentals. These tools can include, again, staff, board members, artists, volunteers, donor management systems, all the front office, back office, front-facing to donors, back-facing to donors that you can put together. Those resources include people, processes, systems, and message, and data. Data is a key resource. Good data provides a pathway for good results. Use it to segment your donors, track your progress, and tailor your communications. Number five, overcoming common fears. Many fundraisers fear rejection. It's natural, but remember, it's not personal. Some will, some won't. So what? Next. And a no today won't mean a no forever necessarily. It's important to handle objections with grace and to stay focused on building long-term relationships. Situations change, people change. Be ready. But let's get into a few of the details regarding mindset and fundamentals. Different prospects have different levels of understanding about your organization, its value, and your commitment to the art and the community. Therefore, you'll likely need to adjust the fundamentals and your mindset to adapt. Here are a few ways that at RSC we approach different segments of current and prospective individual gift donors. We're going to talk about the board and how you approach them and the fundamentals that surround them. First of all, no blanket appeals. I've spoken about this before, where in the environment where we want to be efficient, we often print off the board letters that ask them for support. We give them a pledge form, and we take it to a board meeting, and we ask them to fill it out and give it back to us right away. That is not how we fundraise. That is, and particularly when we're trying to set a tone and a pace by asking board members to help us fundraise and reach out to other prospective donors. These are your most loyal supporters. They're the ones who are highly, highly vested in your organization. And so no blanket appeals. Treat them like people because they are. They are people. Just because they're a board member does not mean that you should shortcut their gift request. Next, ask for their investment and their engagement. As a board member, they're being asked for a lot of different things all at the same time. And it's hard. Good board members are busy people. We know this. And to try to prioritize how we deal with them and what we need their help with and what their gift looks like, we ask them for investment and engagement. And last, we use their support to inspire others. This isn't about necessarily the 100% participation, although I think 100% participation from the board is really, really important. It's more about demonstrating what's possible with a groundswell of support. We thank them publicly for their generosity. We pool their gifts onto a board matching challenge grant or out to the community, or we leverage it in some important way. But we use the board giving to demonstrate and appeal for others to join them. Now let's talk about the mindset when we approach board members. How do we want them to think? First, we want them to give first, give strong, set the pace. That's the objective. That's why we ask them before we ask anybody else. Doesn't mean we have to wait until every board member gives before we can venture out and make any other gift requests. However, they are at the top of the list when it comes to cultivating and soliciting each year at the beginning of the fiscal for the annual fund. So they give first, give strong, and set the pace. Number two, 100% participation. While I say it's not absolutely necessary, it is really an incredible piece of leverage to have all of your board give up front and to do it with an increased gift over their previous year's giving. And number three, secure a challenge grant. What we'll recommend is that each board member make a growth gift over the previous year. Quite often what we'll recommend is that they take the totality of that increase of all the board members and they use it as a challenge grant to help other people give or increase their giving or have new donors join. And so it's a really versatile tool, but it starts with the board and it starts early in the fiscal year. Number four, we target those increases. How do we target increases from the board? Same way as we would with anybody else at a higher gift level. We do it one person at a time. We do it very, very personally. We sit down with them. We look at their volunteerism and where they're spending their time and are they satisfied, how they're participating in consuming the art and are they satisfied. And then, of course, with their annual fund, how they're giving and what their pattern of giving is. Could they increase? And if so, why? And are they satisfied with that? That idea of saying we want to target increases, but it's not done out of obligation. It's done out of satisfaction. Last on this list is individual visits with the board chair and the executive director. They follow up with letters and phone calls as needed. I really encourage you to make sure that your board chair and your executive director are visiting each board member to make a personal ask, not only of their support, but also where that board level volunteer will serve. It'll be important to sit down with them, ask them what you're looking for, certainly hear their feedback. But the core of this is have a conversation. The idea is to have a conversation. And if you send a letter first or you publicize it at a board meeting with the expectation that they'll mechanically fill out the form and give it back to you, it's really selling you and them and the entire organization short. So that's why we encourage individual visits. I know it's an investment of time. The board at large is investing all of their time to help the institution. This seems like a very good way to set an example. A little more on the board giving mindset. You can secure multi-year pledges of 2 to 3 years. Sometimes you can do it in ways that match the term of their sitting on the board. So if their board term is 3 years, they can make their pledge for all 3 of those years, maybe build in some growth. It's not absolutely essential, but in some cases, it's not just efficient, it's preferred. As you get to know each of the board members, and you find out whether or not they can and are willing to make a multi-year commitment, this is one of the tools that you can certainly explore with them. Number 7, an advisory panel that meets at least once a year for board members who rotate off. We like the idea of not discarding board members as soon as they rotate off the board, not just necessarily putting them back into the population. If they've done their job well, and most of them do, this idea of saying, how can we continue to utilize their expertise and leverage what they've learned as a board member to keep talking with them and get their advice? We'll find out very interesting things about timing and sometimes messaging and what resonates with them, what they hear out on the street, what's important to folks they talk to. So I always like to keep past board members close, and a lot of times you can do that by creating an advisory panel. Number 8 is stewardship. Steward your board, report back, and reinforce value. This is a danger area where we can assume sometimes that just because somebody's on the board, they know everything that's going on. They don't. The arts organizations that we work with are big mechanisms. I don't care what your budget size is, you have a lot going on. And it would be nearly impossible for every board member to know every single thing that was happening. Part of the way you bridge that gap is through stewardship. We tell board members what's happening, where the wins are, where our concerns are. We get their feedback, and that's part of building a tight relationship with them that can span years and years, and it certainly spans beyond just their service years on the board. Next, let's go into the leadership giving. So now we're going to put the board behind us. We're going to talk about major gift individuals. Where you put that line is up to you. A lot of organizations we work with will say $1,000 is the difference between a broad-based individual gift and a major individual gift to the annual fund. Others will say $2,500. Some say $5,000. You think about it in the context of your organization, your giving levels, and your donor base. First of all, I say start with identification and qualification. Don't take things for granted. Look at your list every year. Look at your donors. Start by identifying and qualifying them for the coming year. Always start with identification and qualification. When it comes to non-renewing donors, when we're talking about trying to attract new donors, what I would say is please quit with chasing the white whale. This idea that somebody is out there, we have a name, they have lots of money, they give money away, but they don't give it to us. And we just need to get to this person. I've heard that so many times over my career. We just have to get to so-and-so, and then we'll make that big gift and the annual fund will grow and so forth. Every community has a list of donors, but that doesn't mean that you're going to attract the entire A list of donors to your institution. So stop frustrating yourself and your organization by chasing the money that you're never going to get, this obsession about money that you'll never see. Think about it in terms of relationships that can be developed. Number 2, in-person asks. This is, again, very similar to the board. These are people who are giving the $1,000 or $2,500 or $5,000, whatever your major gift threshold is to the annual fund. But we want to do in-person asks. Why? Because we're in the relationship business. And when we're in the relationship business and we have a very narrow number, we have a small number of major donors, why wouldn't we want to meet with them? Why wouldn't we want to talk to them? Except that the clock's always ticking. Our time is competing with other things. And I understand that, but nothing replaces an in-person ask. What's the exception to this? If a donor tells you that they don't want to meet, don't force them to meet because you heard that the best practice was to meet in person. But if someone says, no, I don't need all that, what I'd rather do is this, absolutely. That's part of having a strong relationship as well. Next is use leverage to get the meeting. And by that, you can say, listen, I've got some information that I want to share with you. We're not sharing it with everyone yet, but the reason I'd like to meet with you, of course, is to discuss your gift. But we also have some updates that I'd want to share personally with you and get your thoughts and feedback on if it's real. That's a wonderful way to leverage those relationships to get a meeting. It's not the sort of thing you want to do over the phone. I'll give you a for instance. If you're about to make a major announcement on an artistic staff joining you, or if there's been a fundamental change or thinking about a fundamental change to one of the education programs, and this donor happens to really feel strongly about education, or an expansion, doesn't always have to be a bad thing. If there's an idea thinking that we're going to go a different direction with education or appeal to a constituency that we've never done before, that's a real reason to sit down one-on-one with people, not just to ask for the support, but to bring them closer to the family. This leadership giving mindset, and what I tend to say is of course, leaders lead in fundraising. After your board, your top 20% of your donors are in fact your leaders. But as a fundraiser, you have a responsibility to lead those donors in ways that provide leverage and momentum to your program. Let me just give you some examples to kind of put this into context. The first one is renew early in the first 6 months of the fiscal year. Donors who know you, like you, trust you, who have been giving a very long time, unless they have some life change, they will likely continue to give to you until they reach a certain age and stage. And that's what you have to pay attention to. But they're usually very open to renewing early in the first 6 months of the fiscal year. Again, even if they pledge now and pay later at a time that's normal or comfortable for them. Number 2, we say start with your current donors, then your lapsed donors, then your new acquisitions. Think that leadership level giving. After we go through the list and we say, what are we going to ask each person for this year? How are we going to approach them? Make sure that you do your best prospects first, and then your new acquisitions. Those new acquisitions can start as early as you want in your plan, but don't sacrifice getting the renewed and lapsed donors their gift requests completed first within that first 6 months of the fiscal year. Don't let that lapse into the latter half of your fiscal year. If you have the time, do the acquisitions, but make sure you do the important high-level, high-propensity yeses first. Number 3, of course, is target increases. It's very unlikely that you will ask every single donor for an increase every single year. And it's based on what they know about us and what we know about them and what that relationship looks like. Number 4, leverage that existing challenge grant or secure a new challenge grant. So I'll explain that quickly. So I've seen where when the board puts their money together, their growth money, they can leverage that pooled fund as a challenge grant. Quite often it's to broad-based donors, but sometimes it's gifts at this level to non-board members who also give significant annual contributions. The other thing I've seen very frequently will recommend is that if you have donors in this group, so non-board members who give at a certain threshold or above, when you ask for their growth gift, you can position it to say, we're going to put 10 of you together, and whatever that growth gift is, we're going to offer it to the broad base as a challenge grant. Is that something you'd be interested in? And most donors say yes. They're really excited. Sometimes they don't want their name associated with it. Sometimes they do. Sometimes we name it after a club. But by and large, there are real opportunities there at various levels with a challenge grant. And moving on with their mindset, I say recruit 2 to 3 board members to make calls, visits, and asks. And the question I generally get here is, how come we don't want to just get all the board members to make asks? Well, because they're not all talented to do that, and it's not where their strength is. And besides that, even if you had 20 board members and they were eager to go ask for money, as the CEO or the chief development officer, you really can't manage that many people. It would be impossible to corral that group, make them productive, and to get the job done. So we say 2 to 3 board members who can assist the staff and the artists make those kind of gift requests. Then we say recruit the board members at large, the entire board. This is where the entire board can be involved in fundraising. They can all be involved in managing stewardship activities and participating, keeping donors. We have a few board members who help us get donors, and we have the entire board help us keep donors. And then we can say on this as well, similar to the board, some donors will look like they qualify for maybe a 2 to 3 year gift request. Not everybody wants that. Not everybody can do that. So for instance, if you have a donor who's paying with their donor advised fund, they can't really make pledges, and they certainly can't make multi-year pledges. And so just say, watch that closely. It's a case-by-case basis. Now we're going to move to the broad-based individuals. So we've talked about your high capacity, renewing and lapsed and acquisition individuals, but let's talk about the broad base. First, in some ways, it's really similar with the major donors. We start with the answering of who do we appeal to? And it's the unrenewed donors, it's the lapsed donors, and it's in some way the personal consumers, but who aren't donating yet. Those are the folks that you begin to talk with. And we start with identification and qualification. So if we're qualifying new prospective donors, we go through a process of capacity and propensity based on what we know. And certainly with returning donors or lapsed donors, we'll categorize them because we won't deal with them by name. They'll fit into a category because there's just so many of them. And the solicitation approach on broad base is much different than it is for major individual giving. The patterns can be similar, just the approach is different. We look at identification and qualification, and then we move on to frequency. The frequency, particularly at this group, because you're not meeting with them as frequently, you don't see them as frequently, and sometimes even if you do see them, you don't know who they are. But frequency matters. This idea of not only when we talk to them, but how we solicit them, the frequency of how we solicit them is important. We generally say at RSC, we'll say 4 waves of appeals, direct mail appeals. So now we're moving into the latter because we can't meet with each individual just because of the volume. We do talk about direct mail appeals, telefunding, which I know sounds very, very long in the tooth, but is so incredibly effective still, internet appeals, and other sorts of appeals, but 4, maybe 5 to get those best donors first. And the reason that we want to work with these donors early is because if we secure them in the first 6 months of the fiscal year, there's an opportunity to ask them again, even when they say yes. We call it a second gift or a second gift request. You'll hear me talk about that some, but front loading gives you the benefit of being able to go back to donors and ask them for an additional gift if it makes sense. And number 3, think campaigns versus channels. We talked a little bit about direct mail, and we talked a little bit about telefunding. We talked a little bit about social media, of course, but there's a lot of flexibility in how you reach out to people. Whereas with higher level individual donors, we often want to be face-to-face or by phone. And with this group, we have much more flexibility to reach out to them with different channels of asking. So what's their mindset? What's the broad-based giving mindset? First of all, identify donors with a capacity who could be approached for a major gift or at least a major increase in their current giving. If you think about someone who's been sitting at $500 for several years, is it time to ask them for $1,000? Is it time to ask them for $750? And you should do it thoughtfully and methodically. If they're coming to more donor events, if you see them at more exhibitions or public events, of course, you should take that into account. There are little clues that you'll look for like that to say, should this person be recommended for a major gift or at least a major increase to their gift? Number 2, pull your lists. You have to get those lists together. We won't spend a lot of time in this series about data, but I will say your database has to be in order. The data has to be clean for you to really appeal to broad base. If you've got a lackluster database, or it's lacking in detail, or it's dirty data, any of those things that prevent you from being able to segment and send out solicitations, get those things cleaned up. I cannot underscore it enough how important it is to have clean, segmented data to do this sort of work. And I'd say target 3 or 4 mailings, do one in the fall, do one before calendar year end, do late winter, and do spring. Those are some of the ways. It doesn't have to be that way, but quite often it is that way. It gives you 6 or 8 weeks in between each mailing. If you put phone calls in there, you can also do that and spread those out over a 5 to 6 week period. There's always sort of at the broad base a constant drip of activity. We're always sending an email, we're always sending direct mail, we're always telefunding. But do it logically, do it strategically, and that's why we put the timeline together with the strategies itself on the planning. And again, target increases. Now, I tend to err on the side of always asking for an increase at the broad base. And most of that's because we don't know who our donors are. We don't know the same level of detail about those donors that we do other donors. So except for those ones where we say, listen, we're really going to try to get them to become a major donor, for those who we just want to ask a modest increase, the rule is ask for the increase. They'll tell you whether or not they're going to do it, but you have to ask to get that. We set expectations through the ask. More on that mindset. We say mail to all donors, except those who have donated within the past 3 months. So as you're going through this cycle and you send out a direct mail piece and somebody responds to it, in 6 weeks, you don't ask them again in the next series of direct mail letters that go out. Give them a breather. It's good for them. Allow stewardship to activate. Thank them. Have them enjoy some of their benefits, and then we bring them back around. There will be some exclusions to your list, which is another reason why you need really, really clean data. Number 6, utilize secondary solicitation resources. And we've talked about this. I think about things that are passive, things like the internet. If you post on your website how to make a gift, this is one way to do it. They need to seek it out and then take action. That's a little more passive, but it's a good place to just continue to set reminders that you're a nonprofit and that you rely on contributions to make your vision fulfilled. And that way, over and over and over again, as more people learn about you and the more they learn, that reminder is always there. Number 7, recruit board to manage stewardship activities. I'm really okay with having 1 or 2 subcommittees or task forces, if you will, that manage stewardship events on the board. They can really help staff by saying, we'll take on all the thank you calls, or we'll work with musicians or artists and we'll do the thank you calls for that. We'll do handwritten notes. There's all sorts of little things like that they can do. And last on this list is review those donor benefits. Almost every arts organization has donor benefits, and that's a great thing. Those are most often around events that happen, things like concerts, performances, education moments, exhibition openings. They don't exclusively have to be that, but it's easy to tack on a post-concert event rather than create an event out of whole cloth and one that donors have to come downtown for, come to the hall for, again, in and of itself. So we look at those donor benefits, and I try to set up benefits so it attracts them to any one of those 3 motivations. What it does for the organization, what it does for the community, or what it does for them personally. And you could set your benefits structure up, your recognition structure, to be sure that you touch on all of those. And we can talk more about that in a little later video. So what are your next steps? Let's talk about those for a second. Just take a moment to reflect on your fundraising mindset. How can you shift your approach to focus on value and participation rather than just need? Focus on strengthening relationships with existing donors by doing these 3 things. Number 1, segment your prospects. Organize your donor categories, board members, major donors, broad-based donors, based on their roles, their giving potential, and the level of engagement with your organization. Tailoring your approach to each group ensures your messaging aligns with their unique motivations, their expectations, and it really increases their overall impact. Number 2, refine your mindset. Recognize that each donor category plays a distinct but essential role in sustaining your organization, and approach them with the right perspective. Board members as leaders, major donors as strategic investors, and broad-based donors as a powerful collective force. Shaping your mindset around their specific contributions and how they contribute to the institution allows you to engage each group with confidence and purpose. Number 3, practice your fundamentals. Prepare your messaging and approach strategy for each donor category by refining your case of support, anticipating key questions, and ensuring alignment with their interests. Practice, practice, practice. Practice how to engage board members as advocates, your major donors as partners, and the broad-based donors as a community of champions. And doing this will strengthen your ability to inspire giving at every level. It'll also help you attract new donors at all those different levels. The conclusion is, with the right mindset, a culture of philanthropy, and the right resources, you'll be able to overcome challenges and succeed in your fundraising efforts.